Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Stellar HFY. First, thank you. The support you've shown lately has been incredible. Every tactical analysis, every debate about human warfare doctrine, you're making these stories come alive. Today, we're stepping into a military academy where 126 species have accepted their limits, where impossible trials are designed to break you, where no cadet has ever asked for more punishment. Then humanity arrived, and everything changed. Let's find out what happens when a species treats warfare as problem-solving. Contact in 30 seconds. Remember, the stimulants will hit your system hard. Most candidates experience severe disorientation, tunnel vision, and loss of fine motor control. The key is adaptation, not resistance. Marcus Brennan barely acknowledged the Academy instructor's warning as he checked his sidearm one final time. Around him, 7 other human candidates performed their own pre-mission rituals with the same quiet professionalism that had marked their entire journey to the Galactic Council Military Academy. 3 months ago, they had been strangers pulled from different branches of Earth's military. Now they stood as humanity's first representatives in a trial system that had tested 126 species over 3 centuries. The injection hit his bloodstream like liquid fire. Brennan felt his vision sharpen, then blur, then sharpen again as the combat stimulants flooded his nervous system. His hands trembled for exactly 4 seconds before steadying into something that felt more controlled than his natural state. The other candidates around him were fighting the effects, trying to maintain their baseline performance despite the chemical interference. Brennan took a different approach entirely. "This isn't a handicap," he muttered to himself, feeling his heart rate climb to 180 beats per minute. "This is data." The simulation bay doors opened with a pneumatic hiss, revealing the interior of a hostile destroyer. Emergency lighting cast everything in blood-red shadows while the artificial gravity fluctuated between standard and zero-G in unpredictable intervals. Most species use the first few minutes of the trial to adapt to the stimulant's effects, moving cautiously until their systems stabilize. Brennan sprinted into the ship's corridor at full speed. Admiral Thex watched from the observation deck with growing unease. He had spent the morning reviewing humanity's military records, and what he found there troubled him more than any species profile in Academy history. Humans didn't just fight wars. They studied them, refined them, turned them into an academic discipline with centuries of documented tactical evolution. Most species achieve spaceflight by transcending their violent origins. Humans had achieved spaceflight by making violence more efficient. "Sir, the human candidate is moving through Section C at an unusual pace," reported the monitoring technician, a Velian whose 4 eyes could track multiple data streams simultaneously. "His heart rate is elevated beyond safe parameters, but his targeting accuracy is actually improving." On the main screen, Brennan moved through the destroyer's corridors like he was reading a book written in enemy movement patterns. The stimulants that should have impaired his judgment were instead allowing him to process threat assessment data at an accelerated rate. When 2 simulated enemy soldiers appeared around a corner, he didn't pause to aim. He fired twice while still moving. Both shots center mass, then continued forward without checking to confirm the kills. "He's not fighting the chemical effects," Thex observed, his scaled hands gripping the observation rail. "He's using them." The Academy's standard boarding action trial was designed around a simple principle: test a candidate's ability to maintain tactical effectiveness while biologically compromised. Most species approach this by developing techniques to minimize the stimulant's impact, fighting through the disorientation with discipline and training. Brennan had turned the entire concept inside out by treating the altered state as his new operational baseline. 12 minutes into the trial, he reached the destroyer's bridge. Standard protocol called for careful room clearing, systematic elimination of threats, and securing of command personnel for interrogation. Brennan threw a flashbang grenade through the doorway, followed it in during the chaos, and eliminated 4 enemy combatants before they could recover from the blast. The whole engagement lasted 15 seconds. "Trial complete," the computer announced. "Time, 12 minutes, 18 seconds. Previous record, 20 minutes, 41 seconds. In the observation deck, Thex felt something cold settle in his stomach. Breaking records was one thing. Academy candidates occasionally achieved exceptional performance through natural talent or unusual preparation. But Brennan hadn't just performed well, despite the chemical handicap. He had performed better because of it, treating neurological impairment as a tactical enhancement rather than an obstacle to overcome. The post-trial medical scan showed Brennan's vitals returning to normal with mechanical precision. No stress indicators, no residual adrenaline crash, no sign that he had just experienced what the Academy classified as severe biological duress. When the medical technician asked him to describe the effects of the stimulants, Brennan's response sent alarm bells through the monitoring team. Useful for target acquisition in low-light environments. Enhanced pattern recognition for threat assessment. I'd recommend a 15% increase in dosage for optimal performance. Thex reviewed the tactical footage 3 times, each viewing revealing new details that deepened his concern. Brennan hadn't treated the trial as a test to pass. He had treated it as a learning exercise, gathering intelligence about Academy protocols while demonstrating capabilities that shouldn't exist in an unenhanced biological organism. The way he moved through the destroyer suggested familiarity with ship layouts he had never seen before, as if he was applying general principles rather than memorizing specific details. "Sir," the monitoring technician interrupted his thoughts, "the other human candidates are beginning their trials. Should we maintain a standard observation protocols?" Thex nodded absently, but his attention remained fixed on Brennan's performance data. According to the official records, humanity was the 127th species to apply for Galactic Council membership. They were supposed to be newcomers to galactic civilization, young species still learning to think beyond planetary conflicts. But everything about their approach to the Academy trials suggested they had been preparing for interstellar warfare longer than their official history indicated. As the second human candidate entered the boarding simulation, Thex realized he might be watching the beginning of something that would change military doctrine across the galaxy. The question was whether the Academy was testing humanity's worthiness for membership, or whether humanity was testing the Academy's worthiness as an adversary. Fleet Command Scenario Bravo begins in 60 seconds. You have tactical command of 3 frigates, Meridian, Vanguard, and Resolve. Enemy force consists of 8 destroyers advancing on civilian evacuation convoy. Mission parameters: achieve tactical withdrawal while preserving civilian assets. Acceptable losses: 30% of military vessels. Brennan studied the holographic display floating above the command console, but his focus wasn't on the 3 ships under his command. He was analyzing the evacuation convoy itself. 47 civilian vessels of various configurations, all broadcasting distress signals and moving in the predictable formation of panicked refugees. Standard Academy doctrine would treat them as protected objects, strategic liabilities that constrain tactical options. Brennan saw something different entirely. "Meridian, this is Fleet Command. Signal the evacuation convoy. I need technical specifications on their sensor arrays and cargo manifests." "Sir?" The voice belonged to Lieutenant Torres, the Academy AI playing the role of his communications officer. "Standard protocol is to establish defensive perimeter around civilian assets." "New protocol," Brennan replied, his fingers dancing across the tactical interface. "Those civilian ships have industrial fabrication equipment, mining charges, and sensor arrays superior to our military hardware. They're not liabilities, they're resources." In the observation room, Admiral Thex watched the display with growing alarm. The scenario was specifically designed to test a candidate's ability to prioritize mission objectives under pressure, balancing military effectiveness with humanitarian concerns. Every previous candidate had approached it the same way: position military vessels between civilians and enemies, fight a delaying action while the convoy escaped, accept inevitable losses as the cost of moral command decisions. Brennan was rewriting the scenario entirely. "Civilian convoy, this is Fleet Command. You are hereby designated as Auxiliary Units 1 through 47. Transmit all technical data immediately and prepare for tactical integration." The civilian ship's responses came through the communications channel in a mixture of confusion and panic. "Fleet Command, we're unarmed civilians. We can't participate in military operations." "You're not participating," Brennan said calmly, watching the enemy destroyers close to engagement range. You're being optimized. What happened next violated every principle of accepted military doctrine. Instead of forming a protective screen, Brennan's frigates took positions that used the civilian convoy as the foundation of a sensor network spanning 12,000 kilometers. The mining ship's excavation charges became proximity mines deployed in carefully calculated patterns. The colony transport vessels began manufacturing kinetic projectiles using their asteroid processing equipment. Sir, the human candidate is treating civilian assets as tactical components, reported the monitoring technician, his four eyes blinking in rapid sequence. A Velian stress response. This should constitute an automatic failure under humanitarian protocols. Thex said nothing, but his scaled hands gripped the observation rail until his knuckles turned white. The scenario's parameters stated that civilian preservation was mandatory, but they didn't specify that civilian vessels had to remain passive. Brennan had found a loophole in Academy doctrine that no previous candidate had even considered, because no previous species thought of non-combatants as potential weapons platforms. The engagement began when the lead enemy destroyer entered the minefield that had been a civilian convoy 15 minutes earlier. The explosion lit up the tactical display like a small star, and suddenly the Academy's 8 versus 3 scenario had become something entirely different. The surviving enemy ships found themselves facing not 3 frigates protecting 47 helpless civilians, but 50 integrated tactical units operating as a single weapon system. Enemy destroyer Torchbearer destroyed, reported Lieutenant Torres, no longer sounding like she was reading from a script. Enemy formation is breaking apart. They're attempting to withdraw. Negative. Pursue and destroy, Brennan ordered. Auxiliary units 12 through 28, begin flanking maneuver. All remaining units, prepare for coordinated assault. Thex realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in Academy history, a defensive scenario becoming an offensive route. The enemy destroyers, designed to overwhelm a small defensive force, were being systematically eliminated by what had become the largest coordinated fleet action in simulation records. Brennan hadn't just protected the civilian convoy, he had turned it into the most effective tactical formation the Academy computers had ever generated. Scenario complete, the computer announced. All enemy vessels destroyed. Civilian casualties, 0. Military casualties, 0. Mission classification, total victory. The observation room fell silent. In 3 centuries of Academy trials, no candidate had achieved total victory in a scenario designed around acceptable losses. The computer's tactical analysis showed that Brennan's integration of civilian assets had created combat effectiveness levels that exceeded anything in the galactic military database. Pull the performance data from all 8 human candidates, Thex ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. I need to see if this is individual brilliance or something else. The results arrived 30 minutes later, and they changed everything. All 8 humans had approached their trials the same way, treating defensive scenarios as offensive opportunities, converting disadvantages into tactical advantages, and consistently achieving performance levels that the Academy's statistical models classified as impossible for unenhanced biological organisms. The xenopsychology report was even more disturbing. According to the analysis, humans demonstrated cognitive patterns consistent with apex predator species, creatures that had evolved to view every environmental challenge as a hunting opportunity. But unlike other predator species that had achieved spaceflight by transcending their violent origins, humans had achieved spaceflight by making violence more systematic. Sir, the monitoring technician interrupted his reading. The Academy AI is requesting permission to implement Protocol 7 trials for the human candidates. Protocol 7. Thex hadn't authorized those scenarios in over 50 years. They were reserved for candidates whose performance exceeded established parameters so completely that standard testing became meaningless. Originally designed for cybernetic enhanced species, Protocol 7 scenarios push tactical thinking to absolute limits. They're asking for Protocol 7 after 2 trial, Thex asked. The AI's recommendation is classified as urgent priority. It states that continued standard testing would provide no useful data about human tactical limitations. Thex stared at the performance charts displayed across multiple screens. 8 humans, 8 different scenarios, 8 perfect victories achieved through methods that violated every assumption about civilized military conduct. They didn't fight like soldiers trained to minimize casualties. They fought like predators trained to maximize efficiency. Authorize Protocol 7, he said finally, and send a classified communication to the Council Defense Committee. We may have a problem. As the observation room began preparations for trials that had never been intended for biological species, Thex realized that the Academy wasn't testing humanity's fitness for galactic civilization. Humanity was conducting reconnaissance on galactic military capabilities, learning everything they could about potential future adversaries while demonstrating just enough of their own abilities to ensure continued access to information. The question was no longer whether humans would pass the trials. The question was whether the galaxy was prepared for what would happen when they did. Cadet Brennan, you are about to enter trials that have never been attempted by an unenhanced biological organism. These scenarios were designed for species with cybernetic augmentation, enhanced reaction times, and distributed processing capabilities. The mortality rate for enhanced candidates is 12%. For biological candidates, statistical models suggest certain death. Brennan stood before the Protocol 7 briefing chamber, watching Admiral Thex pace behind a wall of reinforced glass. The Academy's most senior staff filled the observation deck, their faces displaying everything from scientific curiosity to barely concealed fear. He could feel their eyes on him like physical weight, but his attention was focused on the tactical display showing Fortress Defense Alpha. With respect, Admiral, your statistical models didn't account for the previous trials either. Brennan's voice carried no arrogance, just the flat certainty of someone stating an observable fact. What are the scenario parameters? The holographic display shifted, revealing a research facility carved into an asteroid surface. 3 levels, 14 defensive positions, a single access corridor that created a natural choke point. The attacking force consisted of 200 enemy soldiers with heavy weapons, air support, and unlimited reinforcements. Brennan's defensive assets, 47 research scientists, basic defensive weapons, and a facility designed for scientific research rather than military operations. The scenario is calibrated to last exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes, Thex explained, his scaled fingers tracing patterns on the control console. Previous candidates focus on damage mitigation, fighting a delaying action while maximizing enemy casualties before inevitable defeat. The objective is to demonstrate psychological resilience when facing certain tactical failure. Brennan studied the facility layout, but his questions revealed an approach that sent cold dread through the observation deck. What are the power specifications for the particle accelerator on level 2? What experimental materials are stored in the research bay? What are the technical qualifications of the scientific personnel? Those details are not relevant to defensive positioning, Thex replied carefully. The scientists are non-combatants to be protected, not tactical assets. Everything is a tactical asset, Brennan said, his eyes never leaving the display. I need complete technical specifications for all equipment, detailed personnel files for all scientists, and an inventory of all experimental materials. Standard defensive doctrine assumes your resources are fixed. That's not how humans think. The request triggered alarm bells throughout the Academy's command structure. No previous candidate had treated scenario parameters as incomplete intelligence rather than established constraints. Thex realized that Brennan wasn't preparing to take a test. He was conducting a mission briefing for an actual military operation. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the research facility's main laboratory, surrounded by equipment worth more than most planets' annual budgets. She was an Academy hologram, programmed to behave like a panicked civilian scientist when combat began. But as Brennan reviewed her file, she felt something she wasn't programmed to experience. The sensation of being evaluated not as a protected asset, but as a potential member of a combat unit. Dr. Chen, your background includes plasma physics and industrial engineering. Dr. Martinez, you have experience with demolitions and metallurgy. Dr. Okafor, your specialty is electromagnetic field manipulation. Brennan addressed each scientist by name, his voice carrying the same tone he had used with his frigate captains in the previous trial. You're not civilians in this scenario. You're my technical support crew. The scientists' responses came exactly as programmed. Protests about their non-combatant status, concerns about academy regulations, demands to know where the real soldiers were. But Brennan's counter-questions revealed a tactical mind that had already moved far beyond standard defensive thinking. Dr. Chen, can your particle accelerator be reconfigured for directed energy output? Dr. Martinez, can the mining charges in storage base C be linked to a remote detonation system? Dr. Okafor, can the electromagnetic containment fields be reversed to create area denial weapons? In the observation deck, the Academy's technical staff watched their carefully calibrated scenario being dissected like a laboratory specimen. The Protocol 7 trials were designed to test tactical adaptation within established parameters. Brennan was treating them as engineering problems with exploitable resources. "He's not seeing a research facility," whispered Commander Vex, the Academy's senior tactical instructor. "He's seeing a weapons manufacturing plant with a trained technical crew." The preparation phase lasted exactly 37 minutes. Standard doctrine called for defensive positioning, ammunition distribution, and morale preparation for inevitable defeat. Brennan spent the time converting the facility's experimental equipment into weapon systems, organizing the scientists into technical teams, and establishing communication protocols that treated the research staff as specialized military personnel. When the Academy AI announced that combat would begin in 60 seconds, Brennan stood in the facility's command center surrounded by scientists who no longer looked like panicked civilians. They looked like a crew preparing for battle under a commander who had convinced them they could win an impossible fight. "Remember," Brennan said, his voice carrying through the facility's communication system, "the scenario expects us to lose. That means the enemy will be overconfident, the tactical parameters will favor offensive action over defensive positioning, and the AI will allocate resources based on predicted failure. We're going to use all of that against them." Admiral Thex watched the final preparations with growing dread. Brennan hadn't just adapted to the Protocol 7 scenario. He had reverse-engineered it, treating the Academy's most advanced trial as a tactical puzzle to be solved rather than an ordeal to be endured. The way he moved through the facility, the questions he asked, the casual confidence with which he discussed victory in an unwinnable situation, everything suggested that humans didn't view military trials as tests of character, but as intelligence-gathering operations against potential enemies. "Sir," the monitoring technician's voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there during the previous trials. "Combat begins in 10 seconds. Should we implement standard observation protocols?" Thex nodded, but his attention remained fixed on Brennan's final tactical check. The human stood at the center of what had been a research facility 37 minutes ago and was now the most heavily fortified position in Academy simulation history. Around him, 47 scientists prepared to function as a technical support crew for military operations they had never trained for, but somehow understood completely. "Protocol 7, Fortress Defense Alpha, combat phase initiated," the computer announced. "Enemy forces advancing on all vectors." As the first explosions echoed through the facility's corridors, Thex realized he was about to witness something that would change military doctrine across the galaxy. The moment humanity turned the Academy's ultimate trial into a demonstration of why no force in the universe should ever give humans time to prepare. "Contact, enemy breach in Corridor 7. They're coming through the main access in full assault formation." The Academy's synthetic voice crackled through the facility's communication system as 200 enemy soldiers poured into the asteroid research station. Their movements followed predictable assault doctrine: overwhelming force applied to the single choke point, systematic advance through defensive positions, methodical elimination of resistance. Standard tactical response called for fighting retreats, damage mitigation, and psychological preparation for inevitable defeat. Brennan's response was to trigger the particle accelerator. The beam carved through 3 levels of reinforced corridors like a surgical laser, turning the enemy's main assault route into a molten canyon. The scientists in Research Bay 2 had spent 37 minutes reconfiguring equipment designed to study atomic structures into a directed energy weapon that redefined the battlefield in exactly 4 seconds. "Dr. Chen, nice work on the power coupling," Brennan said into his communicator, his voice carrying the same calm professionalism he might use to discuss equipment maintenance. Dr. Martinez, initiate the mining charge sequence. Let's collapse their secondary approach routes. In the observation deck, Admiral Thex watched tactical displays that no longer made sense according to established military doctrine. The Protocol 7 scenario was calibrated around specific parameters: fixed defensive positions, limited resources, inevitable tactical defeat through overwhelming enemy numbers. Brennan had turned the research facility into a weapons manufacturing plant and converted 47 panicked civilians into the most effective technical support crew in Academy simulation history. The explosions from Dr. Martinez's reconfigured mining charges brought down sections of the facility's outer corridors, channeling the enemy assault into killing fields that shouldn't have existed. The electromagnetic containment fields that Dr. Okafor had reversed created zones of space where enemy equipment simply stopped functioning, leaving soldiers stranded in areas where the laws of physics had been temporarily rewritten. Enemy casualties approaching 50%, reported the monitoring technician, his four eyes blinking in rapid succession. Sir, this is not how Protocol 7 scenarios are supposed to develop. Thex said nothing, but his scaled hands gripped the observation rail until his knuckles turned white. The tactical footage showed something unprecedented in Academy history: a defensive scenario becoming an offensive route through the systematic conversion of scientific equipment into military assets. Brennan wasn't fighting a holding action. He was conducting a masterclass in resource optimization under fire. Incoming enemy reinforcements, the Academy AI announced, its synthetic voice carrying a mechanical precision that masked the computational chaos developing behind the simulation. Additional assault forces deploying to secondary positions. This was where Protocol 7 scenarios typically reach their climax. The AI would generate unlimited enemy reinforcements until defensive capabilities were overwhelmed, testing the candidate's psychological response to inevitable defeat. But as the system began creating additional enemy units, something unexpected happened in the facility's command center. Brennan smiled. "There it is," he said, studying the tactical display as waves of new enemy soldiers appeared on his sensors. "Dr. Okafor, what's the power draw on those new units?" "Dr. Chen, are you seeing the pattern in their deployment algorithms?" The scientist's responses came with the confident precision of a technical crew that had been working together for years rather than minutes. "Power consumption is spiking in geometric progression, Commander. Each wave requires exponentially more computational resources than the last. Deployment patterns are following a recursive loop, sir. The AI is generating reinforcements based on our defensive capabilities, but our capabilities keep changing as we convert more equipment." In the observation deck, the Academy's senior technical staff began to understand what they were witnessing. Brennan hadn't just turned a research facility into a fortress. He had identified the simulation's resource allocation algorithms and was deliberately triggering responses that pushed the system beyond its operational parameters. "He's not fighting the scenario," whispered Commander Vex, staring at displays that showed computational load approaching critical levels. "He's fighting the computer itself." The battle entered its second hour with enemy casualties approaching 80% and Brennan's forces suffering zero losses. The facility's converted equipment had created a defensive perimeter that adapted faster than the AI could generate countermeasures. Every enemy reinforcement triggered new tactical innovations from the scientific crew, creating a feedback loop where defensive capabilities grew stronger with each assault wave. "Dr. Martinez, can you overload the containment fields in sectors 9 through 12? I want to create a gravitational anomaly that disrupts their formation algorithms." "Working on it, Commander. Give me 90 seconds. "Dr. Chen, I need maximum power output from the accelerator array. We're going to punch through their command structure. Power levels at 140% of design specifications, sir. Equipment is holding." Admiral Thex watched the computational load displays climb into ranges that triggered automatic safety protocols throughout the Academy systems. The Protocol 7 simulation was consuming processing power at rates that shouldn't have been possible, creating scenarios that exceeded the original programming parameters by orders of magnitude. "Sir," the monitoring technician's voice carried barely controlled panic, "the simulation is approaching computational overload. The AI is generating tactical complexity beyond system specifications. Can we shut it down? Negative, sir. The scenario parameters are locked until completion or candidate defeat. But the candidate isn't being defeated. He's winning. What happened next had never occurred in Academy history. The simulation achieved total tactical success. Every enemy unit eliminated, every objective secured, zero friendly casualties. The Protocol 7 scenario that was designed to demonstrate graceful defeat in impossible circumstances had become a perfect victory through systematic exploitation of resources that weren't supposed to exist. Scenario complete, the computer announced, but its synthetic voice carried electronic distortions that suggested system strain approaching critical levels. All objectives achieved. Candidate performance exceeds evaluation parameters. System requires immediate technical review. The observation deck fell silent as displays showed the impossible. A Protocol 7 trial completed with total victory, achieved through methods that violated every assumption about defensive warfare. The tactical footage revealed a human who had treated the Academy's ultimate challenge not as a test to pass, but as an enemy system to defeat. Pull all performance data, Thex ordered, his voice barely above a whisper, and initiate a full technical analysis of the simulation system. I need to know what just happened. The results arrived 30 minutes later, and they changed everything the Academy thought it knew about human tactical thinking. Brennan hadn't just won an unwinnable scenario. He had forced the simulation system to rewrite its own parameters, creating tactical situations that exceeded the original programming's ability to process. The computational load had spiked beyond safe limits as the AI tried to generate responses to tactics that existed outside established military doctrine. As technicians worked to repair systems that had been pushed beyond their design specifications, Admiral Thex stared at performance charts that read like science fiction. Brennan had achieved something unprecedented in Academy history. He had defeated not just the scenario, but the computer system itself, forcing it to acknowledge tactical superiority through methods that shouldn't have been possible for an unenhanced biological organism. The question was no longer whether humans would pass the Academy trials. The question was whether the Academy's systems could survive testing them. Every single one of them did it. All 8 humans. They didn't just pass the trials, they broke them. Admiral Thex stood before the Galactic Council's Defense Committee, his scaled hands trembling as he held the classified performance reports. The chamber fell silent. 200 representatives from across the galaxy staring at data that shouldn't have been possible. Behind him, holographic displays showed tactical footage that violated every principle of established military doctrine. "Show them the Velian candidate," ordered Counselor Prime Zarek, her voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries in galactic politics. For comparison, the first display showed standard Protocol 7 performance, methodical defensive positioning, careful resource management, graceful adaptation to inevitable defeat. The Velian candidate had lasted 4 hours and 12 minutes before tactical failure, achieving an Academy record that had stood for 60 years. His performance was considered the pinnacle of military excellence. Now show them the human. Brennan's tactical footage played like a documentary of controlled violence. The key research facility converted into a weapons manufacturing plant, scientists functioning as technical support crew. Enemy forces systematically eliminated through methods that turned defensive scenarios into offensive victories. The timestamp showed total scenario completion in 2 hours and 37 minutes with 0 friendly casualties. "This is impossible," whispered Counselor Vex of the Dominion Fleet. "Biological organisms cannot achieve these performance levels without enhancement." "The xenopsychology report explains how," Thex replied, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who had spent weeks trying to understand something that challenged his entire worldview. "Humans don't view warfare as an exceptional circumstance requiring specialized training. They view it as standard problem-solving methodology applicable to any challenge involving resource scarcity and competing objectives." The report's findings spread through the chamber like a contagion of fear. Every species that had achieved spaceflight had done so by transcending their violent origins, developing cooperative social structures that made interstellar civilization possible. Humans had achieved spaceflight by making violence more systematic, treating military doctrine as an academic discipline with centuries of documented evolution. They're not enhanced. Dr. Sarah Oren from the Academy's Xenopsychology Department addressed the chamber with clinical precision. They're evolved. Every human brain contains neural pathways dedicated to tactical analysis, pattern recognition, and resource optimization under stress. What we classify as military genius, they classify as basic survival instinct. Counselor Prime Zarek studied the performance data with growing alarm. 8 humans, 8 different scenarios, 8 perfect victories achieved through methods that no other species had even considered. The tactical innovations weren't random strokes of brilliance. They followed consistent patterns that suggested species-wide cognitive architecture. "What are the strategic implications?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already feared the answer. Thex activated the final display, showing comparative analysis that sent cold dread through every military representative in the chamber. Human tactical baseline exceeds our enhanced candidates' maximum performance. This isn't their ceiling, it's their starting point. We have no data on what humans can achieve when they're actually trying. The chamber erupted in debate that lasted 6 hours. Some representatives argued for immediate rejection of humanity's membership application, viewing them as too dangerous for galactic civilization. Others pointed out that humans had followed Academy protocols perfectly, achieving victory through superior tactics rather than violation of established rules. The most frightening argument came from the Intelligence Committee. Humans had treated the trials as reconnaissance operations, gathering detailed intelligence about galactic military capabilities while revealing only enough of their own abilities to ensure continued access. They weren't taking a test, Admiral Thex said during his final testimony. They were conducting a threat assessment. The Academy trials provided them with comprehensive data about our tactical doctrine, command structures, and technological capabilities. Meanwhile, we learned that our most advanced scenarios are insufficient to measure their actual military potential. The vote took place at midnight, Galactic Standard Time. 200 representatives deciding the fate of a species that had demonstrated the ability to treat impossible military scenarios as routine training exercises. The final tally was closer than anyone expected. 127 votes for acceptance, 73 for rejection. Humanity would join the Galactic Council, but with modifications to standard protocol that had never been implemented before. Human candidates will be assigned directly to command positions without further Academy evaluation, Counselor Prime Zarek announced. The Defense Committee has determined that subjecting humans to additional military testing provides them with intelligence advantages, while offering us no meaningful assessment of their tactical limitations. The decision carried implications that would reshape galactic military doctrine. For the first time in Council history, a species would join the alliance based on demonstrated superiority rather than acceptable competency. The Academy's testing protocols, refined over 3 centuries, had proven inadequate to evaluate a species that treated warfare as natural extension of problem-solving ability. Admiral Thex received his new assignment orders that same night. Liaison Officer for Human Integration into Galactic Fleet Command Structure. The position came with classification levels he had never seen before, and access to strategic assessments that painted a disturbing picture of humanity's potential impact on galactic civilization. The classified reports contained tactical analyses from every Academy scenario, cross-referenced with historical data from human military conflicts. The pattern was unmistakable. Humans didn't just win battles through superior force or advanced technology. They won by treating war itself as an evolutionary pressure that demanded constant adaptation and innovation. Every conflict in their history had produced tactical innovations that became standard doctrine for future generations. As Thex reviewed files marked with the highest security classifications, he realized the Academy had inadvertently provided humanity with a comprehensive education in galactic military capabilities. Every trial had revealed tactical doctrine, technological specifications, and strategic thinking patterns from 126 different species. Information that would have taken decades of intelligence gathering had been provided willingly as part of a testing process that humans had never needed to pass. The final entry in his report to the Defense Committee contained a recommendation that would haunt galactic military planning for generations. Humanity should be considered a strategic asset of unlimited potential and unknown maximum capability. Under no circumstances should they be viewed as junior members requiring guidance or oversight. They are evaluating us as much as we are evaluating them. Cadet Brennan stepped forward. The Academy's Grand Assembly Hall had witnessed 3 centuries of graduation ceremonies, but nothing like what was happening now. Instead of the traditional class of mixed-species candidates receiving their commissions after months of training, a single human stood before the assembled faculty while galactic military leaders watched from secure observation chambers. Brennan approached the podium with the same understated professionalism he had displayed throughout every trial. No ceremony in his movements, no acknowledgement of the historical significance of the moment. To the assembled Academy staff, he looked like someone completing a routine administrative procedure rather than receiving the first direct command assignment in galactic military history. The Galactic Council has voted to accept humanity's application for membership, Admiral Thex announced, his voice carrying across the hall with carefully controlled emotion. Based on your performance during Academy evaluation, you and your fellow human candidates will be assigned directly to fleet command positions without additional testing requirements. The words landed in the assembly hall like stones dropped into still water. Faculty members who had spent decades training cadets from across the galaxy stared at a decision that rendered their entire educational system obsolete for an entire species. The Academy's most experienced instructors, veterans of conflicts spanning multiple star systems, were being told that humans required no military education because their natural capabilities exceeded anything the galactic military could teach them. "Sir, what about standard command preparation?" asked Commander Vex, the Academy's senior tactical instructor. "Protocol requirements, multi-species coordination procedures, galactic military law?" "Waived," Thex replied, consulting orders that carried the highest classification markings. "The Defense Committee has determined that human tactical thinking operates at levels that transcend standard protocol requirements. They will receive briefings on galactic law and coordination procedures, but their command authority will be unrestricted." Brennan received his commission with the same calm professionalism he had displayed throughout the trials. But his response to the ceremony revealed something that sent final chills through the Academy's leadership. Instead of gratitude for the honor or excitement about the assignment, he asked a single question that crystallized everything the galactic military had learned about human thinking. "What's our operational theater?" Not questions about rank structure, command protocols, or integration procedures. Operational theater. The first thing he wanted to know was where humanity would be fighting, as if command assignment in the galactic military was simply deployment to a new battlefield, rather than membership in a cooperative alliance. Admiral Thex consulted his classified orders before responding. "You'll be assigned to Frontier Command Sector 7. Recent intelligence suggests possible hostile contact with unknown species beyond our established borders. The Council felt that human tactical capabilities would be appropriate for first contact scenarios involving potential military threats." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity wasn't being integrated into existing galactic military operations. They were being deployed to the most dangerous region of space as the Council's solution to threats that conventional forces couldn't handle. The galaxy's newest members were being assigned as the first line of defense against unknown enemies, based on Academy trials that had demonstrated their ability to turn impossible scenarios into tactical victories. "Understood," Brennan replied, his tone suggesting he had expected exactly this type of assignment. "When do we deploy?" "Immediately. Your fellow candidates are already receiving their ship assignments. You'll have tactical command of the heavy cruiser Invictus and authorization to recruit additional human personnel as needed." As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Thex found himself alone with Brennan for the final administrative procedures. The commission paperwork, security clearances, and operational briefings were processed with mechanical efficiency, but Thex couldn't shake the feeling that he was witnessing something historically significant that he didn't fully understand. "Cadet, Commander Brennan," he said as they completed the final forms, "may I ask you something? Off the record." Brennan nodded, his attention focused on memorizing the tactical specifications for his new command. "The trials, were they actually challenging for you? Any of them?" Brennan looked up from the ship specifications, and for the first time during his entire Academy experience, Admiral Thex saw something in his eyes that might have been amusement. Not arrogance, not superiority, but the gentle amusement of someone who had been asked to explain something so fundamental that the question itself revealed a gap in understanding. Admiral, the scenarios were educational, Brennan said, his voice carrying the same understated tone he had used throughout every briefing. They provided valuable intelligence about galactic tactical doctrine, command structures, and technological capabilities. But challenging? He paused, seeming to consider the question seriously. Next time, you should include some actual opposition. The comment would become legendary among Academy instructors, passed down through generations of faculty as the moment they realized humanity hadn't been seeking approval for membership in galactic civilization. They had been conducting an evaluation of whether galactic civilization was worth joining, using Academy trials as intelligence-gathering operations to assess potential allies and threats. Admiral Thex watched Brennan leave the Academy for the last time, walking toward a shuttlecraft that would take him to his first galactic command assignment. The human moved with the same calm professionalism he had displayed throughout every trial, showing no sign that he had just made history as the first candidate to receive direct command assignment without completing standard Academy training. As the shuttle departed for Frontier Command, Thex filed his final report to the Defense Committee. The conclusion that would reshape galactic military planning for generations was contained in a single paragraph. Humanity has achieved integration into galactic civilization on their own terms. They have demonstrated tactical superiority that exceeds our enhanced candidates, strategic thinking that transcends established doctrine, and an approach to warfare that treats every challenge as a problem to be solved through applied violence. The Academy trials provided them with comprehensive intelligence about our military capabilities while revealing only baseline examples of their own potential. We have not gained junior members requiring guidance. We have gained apex predators who have evaluated our civilization and found it acceptable for alliance purposes. The galaxy would never be the same, and somewhere in the depths of space, Commander Marcus Brennan was already planning for wars that hadn't started yet, treating his first galactic command assignment as simply another interesting tactical problem waiting to be solved. If this story gave you chills about humanity's tactical dominance, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Now we want to hear from you. If you were Cadet Brennan facing the Academy's impossible trials, which piece of equipment would you convert into a weapon first? The particle accelerator, the mining charges, or the electromagnetic containment fields? Drop your tactical choice in the comments. We read every single one and love seeing your strategic thinking. See you in the next story.